News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
And I'm Alexis Christoforous. Here are the stories we're following today.
Well, Alexis, the big moves in the markets follow major developments in the Middle East. The U.S. and Iran have traded fire in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. carried out fresh strikes in Iran, targeting more than 80 sites, including air defense systems and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps small boats, in response to Iranian attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking earlier in Turkey, President Trump said the ceasefire is over.
To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars.
President Trump speaking to reporters earlier today in Ankara, Turkey. Talks between the U.S. and Iran have been paused since last week while Iran conducts a week-long mass funeral for the late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei.
Well, the latest escalation in the Middle East is at the forefront as NATO wraps up its summit in Turkey. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte threw his full weight behind America's latest strikes on Iran.
When you have a ceasefire and Iran is basically violating the ceasefire, we see what happened yesterday with ships being attacked, I think it is totally crucial that the U.S. forcefully reacts.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says he wants allies to confirm that Iran can never get nuclear weapons.
Alexis, NATO is considering foregoing next year's annual summit to reduce tensions with President Trump and to avoid drawing attention to the host being one of the alliance's lowest spenders. Sources say the president's ongoing NATO criticisms have raised the prospect that next year's summit, set to be held in Albania, could be postponed to avoid creating yet another platform for Trump to disparage allies.
And back here in New York City, officials are trying to stabilize a high-rise building in Manhattan in danger of collapse. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us now in New York City with the very latest. John, good morning.
And Alexis, buckling structural columns and sagging floors in the former Pfizer headquarters on 42nd Street sent construction workers scrambling and led to the evacuation of nearby buildings during the height of the morning rush.
So I walked into the office. I was there for about 10 minutes, and then they were like, all right, everybody out, evacuate, get out now.
The fire department then used drones to inspect the 33-story skyscraper. Here's Mayor Mamdani.
If the floor is deemed to be secure, engineers will enter and begin shoring up the building.
Well, the good news is that things haven't gotten any worse. New York City Buildings Commissioner Ahmed Tigani.
We've been monitoring the building for many hours and have not seen any movement.
A team has entered the structure and determined that contractors can move forward now with the installation of temporary shoring. Residents were allowed back into several of the 7 buildings that have been evacuated as a precaution. The project, among several, reshaping the office stock of Midtown Manhattan as developers convert aging office towers into apartments. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. We turn to the markets now, where stocks are falling following the latest escalation in the Middle East. In South Korea, the Kospi dropped more than 5%. It is now in a bear market. It's dropped more than 20% since last month's highs as the artificial intelligence rotation trade accelerates.
And here in the U.S., Karen, futures are lower once again. Yesterday, tech led stocks lower, with the Nasdaq dropping more than 1%. Shares of chip makers fell almost 5%. Jordan Jackson is a global market strategist at J.P. Morgan Asset Management.
The market's price off expectations, and the bar for these earnings expectations continue to be moved higher. These chip makers delivered stellar earnings. We're in a historic earnings cycle right now, but again, that bar has been set significantly higher, so it becomes more challenging for the markets to kind of keep pace with this earnings projection.
J.P. Morgan Asset Management global market strategist Jordan Jackson notes the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index is still up 74% this year.
Well, Alexis, after losing roughly $1 trillion in market value in less than 2 months, Nvidia's stock is the cheapest it's been since before the AI boom kicked off and sent the shares into the stratosphere. The stock has tumbled 16% since hitting an all-time high on May 14th as investors rejigger the AI trade by ditching Nvidia in favor of competing semiconductor manufacturers, particularly those in the memory market.
And Karen, turning to the economy now, we're going to get minutes from the Federal Reserve's June meeting later today. Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet has more.
The minutes will be the first from Fed Chair Kevin Warsh, and according to Bloomberg Economics, they are likely to show stronger support for rate hikes. Ross Mayfield is investment strategist at Baird.
Any signs of hawkishness, I'll keep an eye on. I don't think the Fed and certainly Warsh want to hike here. I don't think they feel the pressure to. So any signs of hawkishness from FOMC members down the bench, I think will be worth watching.
Bloomberg Economics says given Warsh's communications overhaul, there is a risk that the minutes will take a different form, shorter or less detailed. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Alexis Christoforous.
I'm Karen Moskow, and this is Bloomberg.